Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Community Connections with Ryan Sauers. Super excited to have my friend and colleague, Dr. Melanie Bliss. She's one of the owners of Thrive Center for Psychological Health in Decatur with us today. Dr. Bliss, Melanie, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I was thinking, as you and I were talking before air, I was like, the whole atmosphere of, depression and stress and anxiety in our world right now, which is, it's always in our world, but seems to be magnified right now. And then I thought, we haven't really covered that in one of these shows. And then I thought, who better to have, top psychologist and recognize who speaks to people, has patients. You're booked on patients, as we talked about on air, but we can help them with that. But just tell a little bit of people, because we're going to have a video of this, and then certainly a podcast going all over the place about yourself, your background,
Sure.
and then we'll get into deeper topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your interest. So I'm a psychologist. I'm a licensed psychologist. That means that I have a PhD, and that I specialize in working with people who experience anxiety and trauma and PTSD. Although I do a lot of other types of work and see people for other types of presenting issues. So just for your listeners, viewers who may not know the difference, a psychologist is someone who can do a wide variety of work but does not prescribe medication. That's a psychiatrist, although I do work with psychiatrists in the general course of my day-to-day. So I have a private practice. My practice, I have two co-partners, the three of us jointly own Thrive Center for Psychological Health. We're in downtown Decatur. We've been in practice for going on 10 years. I've been in practice myself for a little longer than that. And I do various amounts of consulting outside of psychotherapy, different workshops, forensic work, work with law enforcement, schools, that sort of thing on the side. But most of what I do in the day-to-day is psychotherapy.
Well, that is quite the background, and I, just watching you and knowing you over the years, just an expert in all these things you do. So, this would apply. We were talking before we went on air. There's companies right now, I know, Melanie, that right now they're struggling with, they got remote workers and they've got family issues and schools, opening and not opening, and there's a lot of stress right now. So I know
Yes.
another things, you do that, if a company says, hey, we'd love somebody to come do a Zoom call and help us through this, that's something you could do, right?
It is, yes. That's definitely something that I think most of us can benefit from right now, is just at least a little pause to reflect upon our own mental health and needs and the world around us.
Yeah,
So
and
yes.
so what, what are you seeing in, your colleagues in psychiatry or psychology, and
Hmm.
trying to make sense of what in the last 6 to 7 months we've been experiencing? And I try to get my mind around this daily, and it's very difficult to do. I mean, and
Hmm.
but you're seeing people, you're trying your best to help people. I mean, what are you hearing? Common themes? Are you hearing
Yeah.
common things? What do you say to our audience right now? There's a lot of them out there listening, trying to make sense of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have been very busy and have been seeing more people than I ever typically see, at least in summer months. And I do see common themes. The most common, of course, is just general anxiety. I don't want to get too technical, but I will just say that, for most of us, our brains are adapted so that we seek comfort, predictability, familiarity. We seek knowledge of what's going to happen. And we don't have a whole lot of that right now. So people are anxious. People are isolated. People are depressed. People are worried for a whole host of reasons. So the work that I'm doing right now is almost all through the lens of the pandemic and COVID, because it's affecting everyone in various ways, whether it's a direct impact of being sick or knowing someone who's sick, or having a failing business because of the pandemic, or whether it's just because they're a teenager and they weren't in school, or they don't know if they're going to be able to go to college. So it's affecting us all for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of studies and stuff I've looked at, I guess what I say is we like to say anyway. I always say in the show, God's in control. You and I know that, but I know me. I like to try to control as many things as I can, and I've quickly come to the part. I mean, I know intellectually you can't, but what I'm trying to say is every day is like an unknown. I mean, every school system's an unknown. Every hospital CEO we've interviewed is an unknown. Every mayor or elected official is an unknown. So, people, that's interesting you said that about your summer caseload going up higher than ever. It
Mhm.
makes complete sense.
Mhm.
But, I guess validating that you were using anxiety is because people don't know what to believe and not to believe. And yeah, people are probably impacted on some level, whether they have a relative or a friend of this or their business. I mean, I've seen
Mhm.
businesses you probably have that they've gone out of business. I mean, they've
Mhm.
been,
Yes.
and it is difficult to when
Yes.
you feel you can't. It's not like 9/11 when we went back to work fully. It's this a different
Right.
time, and
Yes,
we don't
it is.
really know when this is going to end or go back to
That's
new
right.
normal.
That's right.
So,
Yes.
do you have some things that you might recommend? I'm calling you Melanie, but you're Dr. Bliss. You got your
Yeah,
PhD there,
that's fine.
but
Call me
yeah,
Melanie. Absolutely.
that would help people. Just some general things. I know you're not taking patients right now, but if you were talking to somebody about anxiety or depression, that you recommend? I mean, that you say, okay,
Of
here's some things you could
course.
do in this time.
Yeah. Right. So I think there's different levels of recommendations that I would make. One is at a base level, um, and these are some recommendations that perhaps some of your viewers and listeners have already seen in various forums. But that is to um, seek routine, seek out things that are in your control. Um, Let yourself notice the things that are predictable and familiar in your life, and seek solace in those things and comfort in knowing that those things do still exist. Um, and then I would suggest that people who find themselves struggling with whether it's depression, anxiety, loneliness, fear, PTSD being triggered, to engage in practices that are going to help them to manage those symptoms, whether it's mindfulness practices. There's a lot of apps and websites that are available for people to use to kind of help calm their mind, focus their attention. Um, some people benefit from talking to friends. Some people benefit from talking to a therapist. You're right in that my particular practice is full right now. I do have a waiting list, and I'm always happy to talk with people who may be interested in working with me and putting you on my waiting list. And I will follow up, whether it's in 4 weeks or 4 months or whenever that might be. But I'm also happy to try and provide referrals to the best of my ability. There's websites out there. Psychologytoday.com is one of the websites most frequently used by folks to search for a therapist. Most therapists right now are practicing virtually, which is the way that I practice, is in a forum similar to this, similar to Zoom. So it's telehealth. And I've found that is effective. There are certainly some clients that I have who would love to be in person and who I would love to have in my office. But there are also many clients who have found that this is a really viable option for them, and one that they will probably continue even post-pandemic because of its convenience. So I recommend that you use some of those online platforms, whether it's psychologytoday.com. You can filter your search by your zip code, by your presenting issue, by your insurance company. The Georgia Psychological Association has a referral website, and find someone to talk to if that's helpful. Sometimes people benefit from engaging in ongoing psychotherapy, and sometimes people benefit from 2 to 4 sessions of just having someone to help them get their head around what's going on and develop some coping strategies that they can
Yeah,
implement.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, sometimes we realize that we may be struggling with something, and just talking to somebody goes, I'm dealing with the same exact thing. And you
Yes.
go, oh, I'm not crazy after all. I actually feel, these are real feelings. But
Yeah.
I saw, and you might have done it. I saw a ton of people. I've never run the Peachtree, but I saw a ton of people going back to rituals. They actually ran
Yes.
the on their own, in their whatever it was, a
I did
6.2.
that.
You did that, okay?
Yep. I
but
did
but
that.
it was a
Yeah.
sense of, I guess, a sense of not letting something be taken from you, maybe.
Yeah.
you know?
That's right. Yeah, it's kind of reclaiming that sense of personal agency and space, and saying, okay, how can I adapt? I don't get to do this race or go to this event, but what can I do that is going to help me feel a sense of connectivity to others, or to my passions, my interests, to my community, and finding ways to step into that space and making it happen.
You know, you said something funny, but I was telling you before on air, I was actually talking to somebody who's launched a tele-urgent care practice because she's a top ER practitioner and she said, you know, people are waiting 6 hours for a tooth pain because their dentists are closed. And so she's able to do that. And my whole point of saying all this is businesses, here's the positive news. If we learn during this time, to your point about your practice, there's going to be a lot of people that say, you know what? Dr. Bliss, I think I'm good with us continuing our sessions the way we've been doing in the last
Right.
6 months. You know,
Yes.
and rethinking and relearning new things
Yes.
during this time is what I've been teaching people. Don't just sit and
Absolutely.
stare at the wall. Think
Yeah.
about what you can do and improve on and keep your, you know, I don't know. I think if your mind is focused on ways to grow and improve and learn, and you know, like you said, meditate or look at apps, it's going to be a better time than just staring at the news and going, man, this
Yes.
world's coming to an end.
Yes. Yes. And staring at the news can be harmful in and of itself. I recommend to almost everyone that you limit your exposure, and you think very carefully about what to what degree you want to put yourself in that space, whether it's news or social media.
Oh,
But yeah, adaptability, to get to your main point, adaptability is key. And um, when I started doing, I had been doing telehealth with some clients prior to the pandemic, but certainly not full time. And it also wasn't my go-to mechanism. It wasn't the way that I thought was most effective. And of course, I've learned through the course of the past 4 months that flexibility and adaptability are key, and that there's a lot of powerful work that can happen on a screen. So yeah, we
it's
all
fun.
have to kind of think beyond
Well,
our
beyond what we've always done, you know, they announced earlier today, matter of fact, and Laura, my wife, she is the digital learning person for her school. This is her first year in the job. They just announced they
oh
reversed their
wow.
decision and they're going to start digital. So first thing I heard this morning is, oh my God, they're changing it again. And I'm not going to get into that because too many people are going to listen to the show. But my point is, everybody is being forced, whether it's teachers or educators or this or that, to learn in new ways. And I've been trying to tell people, embrace it, try to see what you
Yeah.
can learn from it. You may not like it. I don't, you know, there's a lot of things I don't like, but I will tell you, these Zooms, when I do 3 or 4 of them, Melanie, it's funny. I come out, I'm kind of like, feel like I'm tired. And when I've
Yes.
done them, I'm like, I actually didn't even see somebody in person, but I feel
Yes.
like I did.
Yes. So that is something to be aware of. Zoom fatigue, I do believe, is very real. There is, as much as I was just promoting the virtues of telehealth, it is also true that right now we're staring, at a little dot. Versus if you were here in my office, I might be looking around
Yeah, that's
more.
right. That's
Or
right.
so, there's definitely a drain that happens. And that, to me, as a psychologist, speaks to the need for self-care.
Yeah.
So, we have to notice what our needs are and adapt to that as well. And we all may need more breaks. We may need to walk outside and it's a little hot today, but walk outside and get some fresh air, or just, be in nature. We may need to space our day out in a different way, or maybe even compress it together so that we have more time at the beginning and the end of the day to do self-care practices. So I think that if there's one thing we're all learning during this time, is that we can pause and reflect on what our goals are, what our values are, what's important to us, and how we can make that happen, not only now, but as longstanding practices.
Well, I concur. I was the radio show thing I do, Marketing Matters. I had a guy who's running for office, great guy, and he said that he said his exact same words. He said, this is a great time. I mean, I don't know anybody that wouldn't be doing this, but everybody needs to take time and reflect.
Mhm.
And I'm a huge sports fan, and even the little things, like I decided the other day just to watch golf on TV. I didn't even know half the golfers, but I was like, it was some sense of just watching a ball bounce, and or travel or things you're used to. It's all changed. But I keep telling people, it is going to get better. We are all
Mhm.
going to get to the other side.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
sun, everybody doing their part, doing the smart things people are recommending. And I
Mhm.
agree with you, Melanie, 100%. If you let your mind, I'm not a psychologist, but some of the stuff I've done would be similar. If you let your
Mhm.
mind be consumed with social media and every post and everything that's on CNN and Fox and USA Today, it's going to be difficult to not become very angry and bitter or
Right.
confused. And I see a
Yes.
lot of people I know that they take, there's no peer reviewed articles. There's whatever people put out there and they take that completely as the truth, and that
Yes.
affects them.
Yes. Yes. So it's so important to notice again your not only exposure to news and social media, but even just the conversations that you're having and what it's eliciting inside of you. Because while it's certainly okay to feel angry and to feel sad, and those are natural emotions, and we want to encourage the natural experience of emotions, it's also important to kind of again take stock and reflect upon like how am I feeling, how do I want to feel. You might need to choose to do something that's going to elicit an opposite emotion, whether it's watching a funny video or a show, or intentionally trying to steer away the topic of conversation. I was at a social distanced gathering last week, and one of my friends said, all right, we're going to go around this group of 6 people. Everybody say one more thing about the pandemic that you feel pressed that you want to say, and then let's try
That's
not
it.
to talk about it.
Yep, good.
And we did. And it was actually really interesting to notice the things that each person chose. And I think more than half of us chose something that was more positive or uplifting
Good.
about what our experience has been. And then we said, what else can we talk about? Whether it's music or our kids, but just something unrelated, because we have to nurture our souls in that way.
Yeah, and I love that. And I love that. And the second thing I would say is, and I'm as guilty of it as the next guy, is like this weekend I was like, I'm just going to disconnect. I'm going to read some books. I just let my mind relax between all this stuff. And slowly, I get on my phone, I'm looking up when Tiger Woods is teeing off, and then you go down this rabbit trail, and then I find this, and then, and my point is, before this pandemic, people, I've been saying for years, it's like, this device here, pretty much is what possibly the last thing we see before we go to sleep at night
That's
and the
right.
first thing we see in the
That's
morning.
right.
But
Yes.
I don't know if you would say it's even worse now because people are looking at it every second. And that's
Yeah.
not probably good. I'm not a psychologist, but that's probably not good for the brain.
That is true also. Our screen time has gone up for many of us out of necessity
Yeah.
because we're not in person with people, so we it has to. But yeah, our brain seeks novelty. It seeks real live stimulation, and when we are focused exclusively on a screen, then that the sensory overload affects the way our brain operates, our neural processing, and it can have lasting effects not only on our emotions, but just on our mood in general, and it can become compulsory. It's I've talked to many people who find it almost a compulsion to pick up your phone and just immediately go into that Facebook app or that news app or that coronavirus map of what the state of Georgia looks like and stare at it yet again. So we need to break those habits, and we can create those new neural pathways in our brain. It requires conscientious effort, but it is really important to be mindful of that.
Well, I'm going to say again, and we'll be closing here in a minute, but there's businesses out there, and you got Dr. Melanie Bliss here, but there's businesses out there right now that have salespeople or marketing people or whatever, and they are looking at this stuff, and so there's no way, and I'm down on myself, I'm down on this, and my family's doing this. They may need a session of saying,
Yeah.
okay, looking at your screen every minute is not going to change, you know, the world by you continually. It's just it's a habit. It's a habit. and
Yeah.
and and what I was going to say is, to that point is, if you want to go out to dinner with some people, and I saw the other night at a place I was near, safe and whatever, but there was a family of 3 and every one of them was on their phones.
Yeah.
And we've seen that for years, but I think now more than ever it's just important to be mindful, like you said, of what you're doing and trying to pick things that are Again, I might have picked a bad show, Melanie, early on. I was watching that Ozark show, binging on that. Well, that's a good show, but it's not necessarily up. It's not like a humorous show. So I found
Right.
myself like, maybe I need to take a break from this show.
Right. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
all have to, find ways to do that. And I don't know, do you want to, if there's businesses out there or people out there, do you want to give them a way
Yeah.
to connect with you?
So, right. So, what I would say to that is that you can reach me online. My website is thrivecenter.com, THRIVE center.com. I'm pretty Googleable, Melanie Bliss. And so I welcome people to reach out to me. My email address is drbliss@thrivecenter.com. And from a corporate perspective, what I'm finding people benefit from is just ways to think about how they can adapt best practices to increase, improve morale, and to kind of manage um, some of the personal challenges that people may be having, so that they can improve productivity and just kind of the quality of their work life. Mental health is not something that we often talk about in businesses or from a business perspective. And so I have long thought that that's kind of a next step or next stage of promoting mental health awareness and decreasing stigma that I strongly believe needs to happen. And I'm happy to be a resource for that. So thanks
Uh,
for
well, you're out.
suggesting that.
Yeah, that's a big part of when I want to study my dissertation and stuff in that line of, especially smaller businesses. And you're right, it has not really been discussed, and there's a whole new lane in that. So, we'll keep talking about
We'll
that,
talk
but
more.
we'll talk more.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for this, Dr. Melanie Bliss, one of the owners of Thrive Center for Psychological Health, top expert and long-term friend of mine and colleague. And I really appreciate you, Melanie, taking time to come on the Community Connection Show.
Absolutely. Happy to do so. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, folks, you have been listening to another Community Connections. We had special guest Dr. Melanie Bliss with us today. Stay tuned for more episodes, and we will see you again next time.